Live from Gil Silva Family Studio in Salinas, California, the salad bowl of the world. Welcome to the podcast designed to inspire, the only one built with ganas.
You're gonna work harder than you ever worked before. And the only thing I ask from you is ganas, desire, a haircut. If you don't have the ganas, I will give it to you because I'm an expert.
From the founders of Gil Basketball Academy that empowers youth to play hard, work hard, study hard, and overcome obstacles.
People can't do something themselves. They want to tell you you can't do it. You want something, go get it. Period.
Real interviews with real people about real life.
You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
And now it's time for Ganas, leading from the heart.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Ganas, leading from the heart. I am Jose Gil, coach, teacher, father, husband, and a lifelong believer in ganas, which translates to desire. Today on the show, we have a very special person that is really close to my heart, and one of the main reasons why the success that we've had in our basketball academy and I've personally had in my life, my high school basketball coach, Coach Jim Rear, who's with us today. Coach.
Good evening.
Good evening, Coach. Welcome. And before we get to the legendary Hall of Fame, Coach, I want to introduce my co-host to my right, my young son, Sammy.
Hi, I'm Sammy. Coach, it's really great to have you.
Yeah.
And then to my left, my other son, Josue.
What's up, Coach? It's Josue here. I'm really excited to have you on today.
Good to see you.
Likewise.
So, like I said, we Hall of Fame. I can go on and on. All the accolades that Coach Rear has received, rightfully received. He's just enjoying life right now as a retired 51-year-old person that's just enjoying life and with his beautiful wife Dolly. And we wanna get to know you a little bit more, Coach. And for those that do not really know much about you, can you talk to us about your upbringing, your family, education, your career, and how you started coaching basketball?
Sure. I grew up in Los Altos, up in the Bay Area. I went to Cupertino Junior High School, then I went to Homestead High School. Then I went up to University of Portland for one semester, transferred back to De Anza Community College. And then I transferred down to Cal Poly. And I played everything. When you were in junior high school, sports lasted like 6 weeks. So you went from football to wrestling to basketball to volleyball to track to baseball. I mean, you played everything. And so then I went to Homestead, wanted to play football, basketball, and baseball. I did that my freshman year. And then during the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, playing baseball, slid in, broke my ankle or dislocated my ankle and broke my fibula. So football was done. I couldn't play football anymore. So I just played basketball and baseball. Went up to University of Portland. Wanted to play basketball and baseball up there. So I went up for the freshman basketball team, and just so happened the freshman basketball coach was also the varsity baseball coach. So I played 2 weeks. As soon as school started on the baseball, they had 2 weeks of practice. And I played freshman basketball for a month and a half or so. Then I transferred back down to De Anza. Portland wasn't for me. It just didn't fit right. So I played, transferred to De Anza, played the second semester of basketball. And then I went out for the baseball team, played 6-7 games. Wasn't happy, made a stupid 18-year-old decision, and I went ahead and quit. And then I transferred I played basketball the next year at De Anza, then I transferred down to Cal Poly. Played basketball down there for a year, and then the assistant coach wanted me to coach his son, who was a 7th grader at San Luis Obispo Junior High School. So I did that, and took up my coaching career, took off from there.
And speaking on that, Coach, you think you can expand a little more about like how you got off in your coaching career and how that started.
Well, started at San Luis Obispo Junior High School, and I coached there a couple of years. And then while I was still at Cal Poly, I actually coached 3 years of Babe Ruth baseball in San Luis Obispo. And so I got the coaching bug. So when I got my first teaching job out at San Venancio, went out there, and they didn't have a sports program. They had nothing. They had 3 play days a year with Chular and Spreckles, and that was their athletic program. So I'm just, come on, we got to start something. Mm-hmm. So I started an after-school basketball team of 7th and 8th graders, and my first year there, and we did fine. And then I did that again the second year I was there, then the third year. Third year I was there, I coached the 7th and 8th grade basketball team, but then I was hired to coach the junior varsity at Alisal. So I'd go to San Venancio, practice from 3 to 5, 3 to 4, run over to Alisal, coach the JV basketball team. Well, after my first year, then Coach Haddon decided to take a leave. His wife was real sick. So he took a leave. I was hired to coach the varsity basketball team there. Did that for 20 years. I took 1 year off because in 1980, North Monterey County High School was built, and they laid off 56 teachers in the high school district. And I was one of the ones who got laid off. So I got hired to go teach back up at Homestead, my alma mater. And so I was still coaching varsity basketball at Alisal through November and half of December, but I was getting burnt. I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. So Corky came back, coached the varsity the rest of that year, and I assisted up at Homestead. And then the following year, I got hired back at Alisal, coached there for 20 years. Then I left. I went over to Alvarez for 7 years, and that's kind of how I got into it. I did coach 3 years of baseball at Alisal. I think 2 years frost off and one year of the JVs. So that kind of where I started.
That's a great story. I didn't know that journey that took you to Alisal. I just heard all the stories about you coaching at Alisal. They call it the House of Thrills, right? So I was wondering, I've heard since I played there, everybody calls it the House of Thrills. I was wondering, what's the story behind that name? I don't know if you know a little more how that started.
Yeah, I think it started in 1986, 87, and we were starting to have a pretty decent basketball team. I think in 86 we were 19-9, and then 87, 25-5, and then I think Jose's senior year we were 27-3, and we started getting bigger crowds. And so what was going on, we were playing some pretty exciting games. And I think George Watkins or the Californian or Dennis Lennon with Channel 8, I think they just mentioned, geez, that should be the House of Thrills. All the games are so thrilling. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's when it started.
Yeah, and I remember, Coach, as during that time, I was in the lower levels when the 86, 87, 1986, 1987 team that I remember they'd run out to the song "The Dream Team" and that excitement. And so fast forward years later, when I became a teacher at Alisal High School, an art teacher, my projects were to do something big with the kids and some murals. And I remember the very first thing I thought of was, let's do a mural in the gym, and it's called the House of Thrills, and that's how the mural in the gym evolved, by that idea of the inspiration of the legacy that you created for us all there.
Well, it was so much fun, and you were there, and you remember, but it was so much fun to have success. And back in those years, the football team, I think, set the longest losing streak in the Central Coast section. And so, we just weren't really, really good in football. And so the feeling around campus and the atmosphere, it was just, people really didn't have a lot of pride. And So then we started winning in basketball, and you could just see the feelings of the students and the faculty and the community just start to pick up. And that was a good feeling.
Yeah, and my dad always talks about the 5 overtime game against Palma. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
The legendary game.
I think, in my personal opinion, and it's probably the greatest high school basketball game that's ever been played in Salinas.
Wow.
5 overtimes, Palma, and I think Palma was 11-0, and we were like 10-1. The game was at our place. They'd beat us by a couple points first round of league. So then we, just the atmosphere of the day of the game was just electric all around campus. That's all everybody was talking about.
Wow.
So people started getting there early, and the gym was sold out before the freshman game was over. And then by the time the JV game, maybe halftime, where you enter the gym down the hallway, there was a line to get into our game from that door, down the hallway, through the glass doors, down to the flagpole. And so they called the fire marshal, and they just couldn't pack any more people in there. And it was no more than a 3 or 4 point game. And we, Terry King hit a couple of clutch shots at the end of, I think, the 3rd overtime and the end of the 4th overtime to tie the game, to send into another overtime. And then we just couldn't hang on to that 5th in the 5th overtime, and we lost 53-52. But we ended up going to the CCS. I think we went up to the CCS championship game, I think, that year. And no, we went to the semifinals, and we played Jefferson, I think it was. But magical game.
Yeah, that's it still stands out in our memory because it was. And then remember the following year, Coach, it was a double overtime game. So we actually two back-to-back games versus Palma, 7 overtimes, and that game we did win. And I remember that.
Yes, we did, and that felt very good.
It felt great because we were on the court and we had the seniors who had the graduates from the year before that were on the varsity team running the court and saying thank you, and it didn't really hit us to where like, oh yeah, we just made up for that 5 overtime loss. So
I think the Palma Alisal was one of the greatest high school rivalries in the community.
Totally agree with you, and I think the community people around the area that know basketball would also agree.
Yeah, going off that, Coach, I was wondering, is there any athlete that you've coached in all your years coaching that has truly made like a long-lasting impact on you, or even like a special moment that's really made a big impact on your life?
I don't think there's one. I think there's many. I think back, the first couple of years I was coaching, I had 3 players: Abel Perez, Perry Irwin, rest his soul, and Ronnie Lepper, and I took them back to Colorado to a Denver Nugget basketball camp to work as counselors. And it was just the drive out there, and we spent the first night in Las Vegas. And I took those 3 guys who had probably never been out of Salinas, and it was an eye-opening experience. I had Darnell Bryant and Terry King made a couple, ill-advised choices, and so they ended up living with me during their senior years. And each of them lived with me for, 3 or 4 or 5 months. And I remember Terry made the Rotary All-Star game. And the coach of the team came up to me and he said, you deserve a medal. How can you handle that kid? And I said, he's a great kid. I mean, he had already lived with me for 4 or 5 months. And I'll tell you a quick story. After he graduated from high school, he got a job with UPS and TNA, and he wanted to buy a car, but he didn't have any money and didn't have any credit. Came to me, we went to a car dealership, and I said, he asked me to co-sign for him. And so went down there, and they wanted, I want to say $2,000 for this car. And I looked at him and I said, look, I'm not going to co-sign for you. I'll just buy it for you, and then you pay me back every month. He goes, okay. So went ahead and bought it, and he never, ever missed a payment. He never was even 24 hours late with a payment, and he just showed so much responsibility. I think Joe Medina had an effect on me. He probably changed my coaching philosophy in the fact that we were trying to put in a delay game we called tempo, and I have an offense called the flex, and so I really didn't know what I was doing, and I moved the flex up to the free throw line, and we started running it, and just as a delay game. And then Joe said, Coach, can we try something? Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing anyway. And so he said, well, if we set a back screen, can we look over the top for a layup? Yeah, let's give it a go. And we put that in, and I remember we're pretty effective at running the clock down because there was no shot clock then.
Yeah.
And we were playing North Salinas, and the coach of North Salinas was Steve Blazer, and Steve and I had been roommates for 2 years. We're in each other's weddings, really good friends. So he comes up to me and he says, you run that stupid delay game you have. I'm going to stop you. I'm going to camp somebody right underneath the basket. You're not going to get a layup. I said, oh, okay. So there's a minute and a half to go in the game. We're up by 6. So I go into the delay game. He camps his guy down there. We run the delay game. We run a minute 30 off, and we win by 6. I told him after the game, I said, you really stopped us. We didn't even score on that.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was telling my boys here, Coach, about I remember back in the day when you used to call timeout, and I still as a coach now at the high school, we really don't sit down. Now we sit down once in a while, but we would stand, and you would be on the floor with your piece of chalk, drawing on the floor, and looking back on it, it was pretty strategic and genius because nobody saw what you were actually writing, and then you would erase it with your hand, and it's probably not allowable now to carve into the floor, but what was the meaning behind that, Coach? How did that start?
My high school coach did it. The college coach did it. They didn't have those clipboards back then where you could draw on the clipboards. And so I think one year when they repainted the gym floor, I actually had them paint in a court right in front of the bench. So I, didn't have to draw these lines through the court and the free throw line. I actually had it in the court, and I could diagram, whatever we wanted to do.
Oh, wow.
But then it just became my lucky piece of chalk. And Mary Barker, writer for the Monterey County Herald, we beat, I think we beat Andrew Hill. She put in there, Andrew Hill was really tall, 6'6", 6'5" or so, but Coach Rear had his lucky piece of chalk, so they were okay.
Yeah, talking about like stuff from the past too. My dad always talks about how all the players used to play at Closter too. Like that was how they built their game, kind of built that competitive edge. So I was wondering, like, what is that? What do you think Closter ball had an impact on your players at Alisal?
Closter Park. I think Closter Park is where my players learn to be tough. They never back down. They don't cry about some, measly foul. And if you want to stay on the court, you win. They learned who they could depend on because it was all the Alisal kids and adults. And Jose knows that sometimes criminals. They learned who they could trust, and they learned who trusted them. And I could always find some of my players at Closter Park on Saturdays and Sundays or in the evenings, holidays, summertime. They were always down there playing. And I know one time we won our game on Tuesday evening. We didn't play on Friday, so I gave them Friday off. I said, let's just take Friday off. It's league season. And so after school, bingo, they all went down to Closter Park and they played for 2 or 3 hours. So I think it's where they learn to hone their game and just play, because you never had heard Alisal players bitch and moan on the court about a bad call, about a rough foul. They would just, that's how you play the game. And so it was so instrumental in their toughness, because when we got in difficult situations in basketball games, my players just responded, and they'd done that their whole life.
You know, and speaking on that, I remember the philosophy at Gloucester was no blood, no foul. So for you to call a foul, you'd have to have some major cojones and courage to call it, because you knew you were going to get someone who at that time we didn't know, but now we call them bullies, who would, get in your face. But you know what? I think they respected the fact that we played for you, and then we played at Alisal. And I remember, you were kind of nice when you said there was some shady people that played there, and those are people that we grew up with. We can go on with stories about that, but they protected us, at times. They respected us, and they knew that we were Alisal basketball players. And I remember when you would pass by in your gray van that looked like a spaceship, kind of.
It was a Toyota van.
It really stood out, because that van, everybody knew it was Coach Rear. So, I mean, you would drive by, and I knew you would drive by to see we were there, we were okay. And you because you cared about us so much, and we'd always we'd be teased by them. Oh, there goes Coach. There goes your coach. There goes your coach. But it was a safe haven for us. It was. And
I think those adults and older people, they may have fouled you hard and knocked you on your butt, but they helped you out. And you're right, you earned their respect, and by them playing physical, demanding more of you out there, I think that helped the whole team.
It did, Coach, and I remember. I mean, we didn't know their names. I mean, they all had nicknames. It was Rhino and Cloud, right? And Lil Ruben and Chilo and Fruit. All these guys that are our friends.
Fruit.
Fruit.
I mean, but we all knew them by their nicknames, and those are some of the best memories we ever had. And I would not change a thing about that, because it made us who we are. And you were dead on that respect and that love for the game, and was there, and that was home for us. That was our second home. Gloucester Park.
Oh, you were there. Anytime you guys didn't have school or didn't have a family commitment, find you down there. Find you at Gloucester Park.
So true.
Yeah, and to add on to that, what was your proudest moment as a coach?
There's so many games, I guess, that we were successful at, and having people come up and give you a hug after a game. I had a player, Ryan Siegel, his dad, Bill Siegel. We beat Piedmont Hills in the semifinals, and he came out of the stands, and I thought he was going to break my neck. He jumped up, grabbed me around the neck, and I didn't know who it was, and kind of pushed him to the ground. I mean, I thought this guy's going to kill me. But I think the proudest moment that I ever had was when I was inducted into the Salinas Valley Sports Hall of Fame. And that was because of all the players who played for me and did that. And here's a picture of, I think we had 25, 30 of my former players there. And you see this guy right here, that Jose guy there.
That was an amazing night.
I think that was on a Saturday night, and I think the Friday night before, most of those guys showed up at kind of an impromptu dinner at a restaurant in town, and every one of the guys who was there stood up and kind of told a story of something. And then I kind of responded when they were all done, and some of their wives and some of their parents spoke. And then when I was all done, they were all done, I got to speak about each one of them, what they meant, what they brought, and so on. I was so proud that night. I mean, I've been invited to their weddings. I've been invited to their birthday parties. And yes, I've been invited to some of their bachelor parties. So,
we want stories, Coach. We want details.
but I was just so proud to be associated with all of those players. Robert Sides brought 8 players from my very first basketball team to that night. That's Robert's way off to the left in a cowboy hat, but it was just I came home after that banquet and Dolly and I just sat around and I can't believe this. This was just so amazing. It just felt so wonderful.
And I'm sure gratifying because I was part of that special evening of you being elected into the Hall of Fame. And it hit us all because we all have stories about the memories that sports have for us, right? And those that our podcast listeners that are out there listening and that played high school basketball or middle school, you have all these memories, and you always have a coach that you could always say, yeah, that coach had an impact on my life. But what was your strongest asset as a coach now reflecting back? And why do you think it's critical for coaches nowadays to be aware of the impact that they have on the youth?
I think I knew the importance of practice. And I would have a practice plan and I would have it down to the minute. So we're going to start at 3:15, and we started at 3:15, whether you were there or not. And very rarely did I have any players late to practice or let alone miss a practice. And I never missed a practice in my entire coaching career.
Wow.
I was never late. I never missed a game. And the other thing, I know God gave me the ability, I could just see the court. And I pretty much knew when they weren't given 100%. And I was always able to hold them accountable. And I think that helped me because a reporter came in one time and he asked me a couple of questions, and while the guys were doing layups right at the beginning of practice. And so it was 2 or 3 minutes real quick. He asked me a few questions. So then the guys were done with our pregame layup. I said, okay, get on the line. You owe me 15 liners, suicides. They kind of looked around and went, what is it? You missed 15 layups in warmups. And they kind of looked around like, how the hell did he know that? So I was able to see things. Now, if you think back, and I think how coaches have such an impact on the players. If you think back, you can probably name all your coaches that you ever played for. Whatever the sport was, you probably remember their name. Yet, tell me the name of your 7th grade math teacher or your 10th grade English teacher.
Yeah.
Coaches hold that special place in their players' lives. And I was consulting with a family group called Family Violence Prevention Fund. And we were working on teaching our athletes that violence against women is not right. Mm-hmm. So they flew me back to Washington, D.C., and I got to speak in front of these senators. And one of the parts of my speech was, how coaches have influence on young people much more so than a lot of other people. And I looked out in the audience, and then 150 people out there, senators, mayors, congressmen, and I told them the same thing. You can go back and tell me who your Little League coach. Mine was Mr. Stevens. Who your freshman basketball coach was. Mine was Mr. Benson. So you can just go back, and it's those coaches that had the influence. And I think coaches today, when they get into the profession, they need to remind themselves that they're going to have a big impression on the kids who play for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
Yo, man, that's very true, Coach. I mean, I'm thinking about it now. Like, I don't even know if I can remember my 2nd or 3rd grade teachers' names. So like, really, coaches really do have that impact on people's lives. So looking back at it, if you could like, change one or two things about your coaching style or just the way you coach, what would you change?
I think I would have listened to my players earlier in my coaching career. I would have talked to the players and not talked at them. I think I would have emphasized playing harder on defense. Never take a play off. Those are some of the little things. I think I always got to know my players. I got to know about their families and their home situations, and driving places, driving up to Lake Tahoe. A lot of coaches asked me, they said, "Jesus, is that Lake Tahoe basketball camp really that good? Because you're coming back here having a lot of success, and they must be teaching you some great things up there." But what they didn't understand, it wasn't necessarily that the 3-day camp was that great, but the drive from Salinas to Tahoe in my silver spaceship, as Jose calls it, I got to talk to the players. And so I made sure they rotate in the passenger seat next to me, and they got to know me and I got to know them. And I think that was so important. And I had one former player, he was a senior, and we were losing or whatever, and I was getting anxious, and I kind of raised my voice, and he said, "Coach, we don't disagree with what you're saying. It's just how you're talking to us." And I kind of stopped there and I went, You're right. I can raise my voice, but I can't raise it in a manner that I'm belittling them. So I think I would have been a little calmer when I was younger.
It's funny how you bring up that the Tahoe, the South Lake Tahoe camps, and I remember it's the first time in my life I'd ever been to Lake Tahoe with you, and funny how the world works. Coach Tom Orlick at the time at South Lake Tahoe is now associate coach at Stanford. For the men's basketball team, and Josue, who's part of the program there. When I told him the story, about Coach Rear taking us to South Lake Tahoe, and he was the coach. I had the chance to mention it to Coach Orlich, and he right away just said, "Jim, you played for Jim Rear?" And I said, "Yep, I played for Coach Rear." He goes, "Oh my God, why didn't you tell me?" I'm like, I tried, waited for the right moment, and since then, he just we had that little moment of we have something in common, and do you remember that story, Josue?
And he's always asking me how you're doing and stuff, and say hi to Coach Rear. So he definitely remembers you and has a lot of respect for you as well.
Well, thank you. But I think part of the reason was that, he beat us every time we went up to those tournaments, except one year when I had Darnell and Pancho Carrito. We beat his team the first game in his little summer tournament. Oh, he didn't take that well at all, but he'd probably beat me 20 times before that. Another quick thing, when I first started taking teams up there, he would actually open up the wrestling room at the end of the gym, in the smaller gym, and let us bring sleeping bags, and we actually slept on the wrestling mats.
That's right.
Yeah, to save us some money.
I remember that. And another I still can't believe this, but story of South Lake Tahoe, when there was a shootout and the 3-point shooting contest that they used to have, right? Because none of us were in the slam dunk contest because we couldn't touch the net. But
Jose, you could have been in that. You just chose not to win it.
Yeah, there we go. So I remember the 3-point contest, and the year after when I graduated, and you took the sophomores or the next class, and my brother-in-law Francisco, Frankie Silva, was one of those that got to go, and he got to go up against Jared Haas in the final of the 3-point contest, and his proud moment was that he beat Jared Haas, who went on to play at Cal Berkeley and started in the backcourt with Jason Kidd, and now is the head coach at Stanford University. And my godson, Francisco's son, Isael, committed to play basketball at Stanford for Coach Jared Haas. And so I remember telling Coach Haas that story, and he just started chuckling, and it was like, wow, this is unreal.
It's a small world.
It's a small world. Yeah, Coach. So, as we wind down our podcast, and I'm sure our listeners are going to love all these stories, and it's been, we can go on for hours. We got to get you back on for another show. But, Ganas is the name of our show, and you exemplify that perfectly as an inspirational coach, father figure, and husband. But you do so much, and especially in our basketball academy, in the Gill Basketball Academy, you are always volunteering to give me advice, to give advice to the coaches. You come speak to the kids. You're an active board member with us. And, all that is desire. All that's ganas. You don't have to do it. You want to do it, and you take time to do it. So for our podcast listeners out there, can you, what advice would you have for them when it comes to ganas and desire? Because I know many coaches are going to be listening to this podcast, and it's more than just coaching the game.
Well, if I had some advice to give to the coaches, don't give up on the players. See the good in the players. Let them know your expectations. Talk with the players. Get involved with their lives. You'd be surprised how much commitment or effort, you're going to receive from players if you show them you care about them. Everybody has that special person in their life that they don't want to let down, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a relative, a coach. And remember that one person, that one teacher that you always wanted to come prepared to their classroom because you just didn't want to let them down. When my daughter was growing up, I said, if you misbehave, I'm going to send you down and you're going to have to explain what you did to Auntie Ani. She goes, no, don't do that. Don't do that. So it could be a priest. It could be anybody, but there's that one person. You just think back who you just didn't want to let down. And what traits did they have to make you feel that way? And I think if you think about why can't I not let them down? When I say don't give up on players, I had a player played for me his senior year, Jose Estrada. Just was on playing basketball. Who knows why? He wasn't very good. And his junior year, he kept him on the team because I didn't cut anybody because I hated cutting people. It made me feel bad. So he's sitting on the bench, and finally I said, he's disrupting the bench. So I made him sit next to Joe Mazuka, my assistant. And that kind of got him. And he didn't get to play his junior year. His senior year, he started. Now here's a kid growing up on the east side of town. He has nothing, didn't play any other sports, has nothing. And all he did was kind of misbehave. He couldn't jump, couldn't shoot that well. He wasn't that fast, yet he was my starting small forward on a team that went to the CCS championship game at San Jose State.
And he had a huge impact on the team.
We kept bringing him along, and that was a huge success story.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. And Coach, as we wind down our segment, our podcast, we're going to finish it off with our carne asada aspect. I love to barbecue. You've been to my house, and when we have food, and I think you enjoy it. So we just kind of casual conversation in the backyard, and we're going to ask you some questions, and then, whatever comes to mind first, we want you to answer it, but rapid fire questions that coming at you, Coach.
Oh, we're going to do that right now.
We're going to do it right now, Coach.
We're going to do it.
Oh, okay. I'm not ready, but let me. I'll be right back.
All right, here we go,
Okay,
Coach.
I'm ready.
Game on the line. Who do you have taking the last shot, Curry or Thompson?
Curry.
Ooh,
Wow,
good choice.
okay.
All right, LeBron or Kobe?
Kobe.
Good answer.
Mamba.
Nike or Adidas?
Oh boy, there's so many different facets. You mean one who puts more money into shoes? Okay, I'm gonna go with Nike.
Nike, okay.
Yeah.
Favorite basketball movie of all time? Before you answer it, I kind of went out on the limb and answered it for you, and I told the kids, so let me see what you choose. Favorite basketball movie of all time?
Favorite basketball movie of all time. You already answered it for me.
I think I'm right. I think I got it.
Hoosiers.
No. Yep, Hoosiers.
You got it, yeah.
Yes.
What's your favorite food?
Anything my wife makes.
Good answer.
Anything.
That's a nice, safe answer, yes.
Let's say you're channel surfing right now looking for something to watch. Would you rather watch an intense NBA game or NCAA game?
Oh, NC2A all day long.
Yeah. Coach, here's your final one. Your favorite John Wooden story?
I think the first time I met him when I worked his camp down at Cal Lutheran. And this was in 1973, I think it was 72 or 73. And I think it was his last year of coaching. And they'd won 10 NC2A championships and whatever. And I think I was walking across the dorm courtyard at lunchtime and it was empty. And so I was running back to my dorm, I don't know, go to the bathroom or something. And here comes John Wooden walking across towards me in the inner court area. And I'm thinking, my God, there's John Wooden. Oh, what do I do? What do I do? And finally, Coach, my name is Jim Rear. I'm working your camp this summer. Jim, great to meet you. Glad you're here. And the following year, I worked his camp again, and he's in the gym. And my group happened to be right in front of the stage because he would stand on the stage and do the drills. And he looked down and he goes, Jim, can you come up here and help me? My God, he remembered my name. And I was floored. He was really an incredible person.
Yeah, I remember that one time when you and I went to CSUMB, right? And we got to see John Wooden and Coach Pete Newell. And
Yep.
it was such an amazing night. The Night of Legends, I believe it was titled, a fundraiser.
Yeah, Night with the Legends.
Night with the Legends.
And when they coached against each other, when Pete Newell was at Cal and John was at UCLA, Cal beat him more than he beat UCLA.
Yeah, amazing. Wow, this has been quite a podcast. Thank you, Coach, for being on our show.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you, Coach.
you.
Thank you.
And that's our show today. We'd like to thank Coach Jim Rear for being a special guest on our podcast.
On behalf of the GBA family, keep leading with ganas.
My heritage is deep in my veins, blood of a king, lot different than most. I come from a long line of hustlers, we dig from the dirt, no need to boast. My heritage taught me to fight, they moving their brains while they busting their back. My heritage made me a wolf, I'm ready for battle as I lead my pack. My head held high cause I'm proud of my roots, my heritage. It gave me a boost to the top, now I'm fair that we running from the cops. Now this is America, don't sound surprised. They go on the news and spread it with lies. Truth that evil's in different forms. The rich can get richer, bro, it's a norm. History repeats itself, that's how it goes. Trump signing bills, and I call it Jim Crows. What's up, it's the fan, we still got each other. I trust in my neighbor, just like my brother. Our heritage taught us the power of unity. We always on top as we got community. And I take that over money any day. We stick together, our problems gonna fade away. My heritage taught me when there's a will, there's a way. We need to find that way. My heritage, it taught me to hustle. My heritage, it taught me to fight. My heritage.